My name is Mia, and I thought coming home would save me. I was wrong. Every job I applied to, every single one called me back with the same words: we can't hire you. I couldn't understand it until one manager finally told me the truth. My own parents called them, told them I had a criminal record. Theft, fraud, lies, all of it lies. I confronted them, and what my mother said next broke me in a way I never expected. She said, "You think you're better than us. You always wanted to leave, so we made sure you couldn't." This is the story of how I escaped, how I fought back, and the letter that finally set me free. My name is Mia, and this is my story. I sat on the edge of my twin bed, the springs groaning under my weight just like they had when I was 16. At 22, I felt 100 years old. The walls of my childhood bedroom still wore the same pale lavender I had picked out in 8th grade, a color that now felt more like a cage than a comfort. Outside my window, the Nebraska sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that I used to love. Now, I barely noticed. My laptop sat open on my desk, the screen glowing with the familiar, soul-crushing light of an email inbox. 0 new messages. It had been 3 months since I had packed up my small apartment in Lincoln and moved back home. 3 months of firing off resumes and cover letters like a soldier in a war I was losing. 3 months of my mother, Brenda, hovering in the doorway with a look that mixed pity with something else, something tight and watchful. I ran a hand through my messy brown hair and pulled up my email drafts. There it was, the umpteenth application I had polished last night, a receptionist position at a local dental clinic. It wasn't my dream job, not by a long shot, but it was a job, it was a paycheck. It was a step back out into the world. I hit send, the soft click of the trackpad sounding final in the quiet room. Please, I whispered to the screen, to the universe, to anyone who was listening. Please, just this once. The doorbell rang, a sharp, insistent buzz that cut through the morning calm. I heard my mother's quick footsteps on the hardwood floors downstairs, then the low murmur of voices. A few minutes later, Brenda appeared in my doorway. She was a small woman with a tight perm and eyes that seemed to miss nothing, yet see nothing at the same time. That was the mailman, Brenda said, her voice flat. Had a package that needed a signature. Also said he saw you moping around the yard yesterday. Folks are starting to talk, Mia. They're wondering why an able-bodied girl like you isn't working. My stomach clenched. I'm trying, Mom. I just sent out another application. Brenda's eyes flickered to the laptop. To where? A dental office over on Millard Avenue. My mother gave a short, humorless laugh. A dental office. Well, I guess that's something. She turned and walked away, leaving me staring at the empty doorway, the familiar feeling of being a problem rather than a person settling back onto my shoulders. That was the thing about coming home. It wasn't a sanctuary. It was a glass house, and everyone in our small town of Brighton Falls was holding a stone. 3 days later, my phone rang. The caller ID flashed an unfamiliar local number. My heart hammered against my ribs. I stepped out onto the back porch, the screen door banging shut behind me. Hello? Yes, is this Mia Henderson? My hand trembled. Yes, speaking. Hi Mia, this is Dr. Evans from Millard Family Dental. I'm calling about the receptionist position you applied for. My breath caught. This was it, the first callback in weeks. Oh, yes, thank you so much for calling me. There was a pause on the other end of the line, a long, uncomfortable pause. We received your application, Dr. Evans continued, his voice now laced with an awkward formality. And I have to be honest with you, Miss Henderson. We had a preliminary phone conversation with your parents. The world tilted slightly on its axis. I gripped the porch railing. I'm sorry with my parents? Yes, they called the office. They explained the situation, your legal situation. My mouth went dry. My legal situation, I don't have a legal situation. I've never even had a speeding ticket. Another pause, longer this time. Miss Henderson, your parents were very specific. They told us about your criminal record. Theft charges. Said you had a problem with taking things from previous employers. They said they felt it was their civic duty to inform us before we made a hiring mistake. The blood drained from my face so fast I felt dizzy. I slumped against the porch railing, my legs unable to hold me. That's not true, I whispered, my voice cracking. That's absolutely not true. I've never stolen anything in my life. I've never even been arrested. "I'm sorry," Dr. Evans said, and he did sound genuinely sorry. "But it's company policy. We can't take that kind of risk. We have elderly patients, valuable equipment. I have to prioritize the safety of the practice." "But it's a lie," I pleaded, tears now streaming down my face. "Please, you have to believe me. They're lying." "I'm sorry," he said again. "I wish you the best of luck." The line went dead. I stood frozen on the porch, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the hollow silence. The screen door banged open, and my father, Gary, stepped out, a cup of coffee in his hand. He was a large man with a silent demeanor, a shadow that moved through the house. "That the dentist?" he asked, not looking at me. I turned to him, my face a mess of tears and confusion. "Dad, they said you called them. You and Mom. You told them I have a criminal record." Gary took a slow sip of his coffee, his eyes on the backyard. "We're just trying to look out for you, Mia. Make sure you're not getting in over your head." My confusion morphed into a raw, gut-wrenching disbelief. "You're lying to people, you're destroying my chances. Why would you do this?" He finally looked at me, and his eyes were cold. "Because we know what's best. You've always been too big for your britches, thinking you could just waltz out of here and make something of yourself. Maybe it's time you learned your place." He turned and walked back inside, leaving me alone with the truth. A truth so bizarre, so cruel, I couldn't process it. My own parents were sabotaging me, deliberately, systematically. The next few weeks became a surreal and agonizing detective game. I continued to apply for jobs, but now I did so with a gnawing dread in the pit of my stomach. Every time I got a nibble of interest, I waited for the other shoe to drop. And it always did. I applied for a cashier position at the local grocery store, Piggly Wiggly. A nice manager named Carol called me, seemed enthusiastic, and scheduled an in-person interview. I showed up, nails bit down, dressed in my best blouse. Carol met me at the customer service desk, but her smile was strained. "Mia, honey, I'm gonna be straight with you," Carol said, keeping her voice low. "We had a couple of phone calls here, from your folks." My heart sank, a heavy stone plunging into dark water. "Carol, whatever they told you, it's not true. They said you had a history of till tapping, shortchanging the register. They said you got fired from your last job in Lincoln for it." "That's a lie. I left my last job because the company downsized. I have references, my old manager. She'll tell you." Carol held up a hand, her face sympathetic but firm. "I believe you're a nice girl, Mia. I really do. But this is a small town. My cousin is married to your mother's hairdresser. If there's smoke, there's usually fire, and I can't have that kind of heat in my store. I'm sorry." I walked out of the Piggly Wiggly in a daze. The sun was too bright, the parking lot too loud. I saw my mother's car, a beat-up Oldsmobile, parked outside the laundromat across the street. Brenda was just sitting there, watching me. I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the temperature. I tried a waitressing job at a diner on the edge of town. The owner, a burly man named Sal, was short-staffed and desperate. He offered me a trial shift on the spot. My hopes soared. I worked a double shift, running my feet raw, and did a good job. Sal told me to come back on Monday to do the paperwork. Monday came, and so did Sal's sheepish expression. "Your old man was here this morning," Sal said, rubbing the back of his neck. "Nice fella. Bought a cup of coffee, sat and had a chat with me for a half hour." My stomach dropped. "What did he tell you?" "Sal told me about your anger management issues. Said you got into a fight with a customer at your last job and broke a plate. Nearly hit someone." "That never happened. I've never even raised my voice at a customer in my life," Sal shrugged. "Maybe so, maybe not, but I can't have that kind of liability. My insurance would go through the roof." "Sorry, kid. You did good work, though." That night, I didn't go home. I sat in my car, a clunky Honda Civic with a dented fender, in the parking lot of the Brighton Falls Public Library. I used their free Wi-Fi to search my own name. Nothing. No criminal record. No news articles. No mugshots. I was, for all intents and purposes, a ghost. A ghost my parents were working tirelessly to haunt. I thought about driving away, just getting on the highway and never looking back. But I had $47 in my bank account and a quarter of a tank of gas. I was trapped. The breaking point came 2 months later. I had all but given up on Brighton Falls. I started applying for jobs in Omaha, a 2-hour drive away. Cities were anonymous. Cities didn't have hairdressers who knew your mother. I found a listing for an administrative assistant at a small marketing firm. It was a real, professional job. The kind of job that could actually lead to a career. I poured my soul into the application, wrote a cover letter that made me sound competent and eager, and included glowing references from my professors at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. A week later, I got an email from the hiring manager, a woman named Patricia. They wanted to do a video interview. I was over the moon. I borrowed a friend's nice blazer, did my hair, and sat in my car with my laptop balanced on the steering wheel for the interview. It went perfectly. Patricia seemed impressed, asked smart questions, and laughed at my nervous jokes. "We have a few more candidates to interview," Patricia said at the end, "but I have to tell you, Mia, I'm very impressed. I'll be in touch by the end of the week." I hung up and let out a scream of joy that echoed in the empty car. This was it. This was my ticket out. On Thursday, my phone rang. It was Patricia. I answered with a bright, professional hello, "This is Mia." "Mia, it's Patricia from Creighton Marketing." Her voice was different. Cool. Distant. "Yes, Patricia, how are you? I'm fine. Mia, I have to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." My heart began to race. Of course. "Anything?" Earlier this week, I received a series of very concerning phone calls from a woman identifying herself as your mother. She provided a great deal of personal information about you. She told me about your legal history. She mentioned a conviction for fraud and identity theft. She said you had stolen from your own family. The world stopped. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't speak. The silence on the line stretched into an eternity. "Mia, are you still there? Patricia, I swear to you, I have no criminal record. My mother is lying. She's been doing this to every single job I apply for. She and my father, they call and they lie. They tell people I'm a thief, a criminal, that I have anger problems. It's all lies. I don't know why they're doing it. I'm begging you, please check my references, talk to my old professors. They'll tell you." Another long pause. "Mia, your mother sent me a document, a police report. It had your name on it, a case number, everything. It looked very official." My mind raced. "A police report? How could they have a police report, Patricia? That document is a fake. I don't know how they got it or made it, but it's a fake. My parents I don't know what they are, but they are trying to destroy my life. Please, you have to believe me." "I don't know what to believe," Patricia said, her voice soft but firm. "But I can't hire you. Not with this hanging over my head. The risk is too great for our company. I'm sorry, Mia, I truly am. I wish you the best." The call ended. I sat in my car, staring at the library's brick wall. The tears didn't come this time. There was only a cold, hard knot of fury forming in my chest. It was one thing to sabotage a waitressing job at a diner. But a professional career, this was a premeditated, calculated act of destruction. They weren't just keeping me close. They were trying to bury me. I drove home, but I didn't go inside. I sat in the driveway, watching the warm light glow from the kitchen window. I could see them inside. My father was at the table, reading the newspaper. My mother was at the stove, stirring something in a pot. They looked so normal, so innocent, like any other American parents on any other evening. I got out of the car, walked up to the front door, and let myself in. The smell of pot roast filled the air, my comfort food as a child. "You're home early," Brenda said without turning around. "How was the interview?" I walked into the kitchen and stood in the middle of the floor. "You know damn well how it was, Mom, because you called them. You sent them a fake police report." Gary slowly folded his newspaper and set it on the table. Brenda turned from the stove, a wooden spoon in her hand. Her face was a mask of practiced innocence. "I don't know what you're talking about, young lady." "You're a liar," I said, my voice shaking with a lifetime of suppressed anger. "You are a pathological liar, and I am done." Brenda's eyes narrowed. "You watch your mouth in this house. After everything we've done for you. Taking you in when you had nowhere else to go. Feeding you. Clothing you. And this is the thanks we get: accusations, taking me, and you sabotaged my life in Lincoln. You called my landlord. Didn't you told him I was running a drug operation out of my apartment? That's why he didn't renew my lease. I couldn't figure it out, until now." Gary stood up. He was a big man, and the kitchen suddenly felt very small. "You're being hysterical, Mia. You need to calm down." "Don't you tell me to calm down," I screamed, tears finally breaking free. "You have systematically destroyed every single opportunity I have had for the past 6 months. You have lied to people, forged documents, impersonated me, That is illegal, that is fraud, you could go to jail for the first time. A flicker of something feared out crossed Brenda's face. We were just trying to protect you. From what? From success, from happiness, from leaving this miserable town and this miserable house I was pacing now, my hands flying. Why, that's all I want to know. Why would you do this to your own daughter? Brenda's face hardened again. Because you think you're better than us. You always have. With your fancy college education and your big city dreams. You were never grateful for what we gave you. You just wanted to leave. The truth hit me like a physical blow. It was so simple, so petty, so monstrously cruel. It was jealousy. Plain and simple jealousy. My mother, who had married her high school sweetheart and never left a 50-mile radius of the town she was born in, was jealous of her daughter's ambition. And my father, too weak to stop it, had become an accomplice. So what? I whispered, the fight draining out of me. So you decided to make sure I could never leave. You'd rather have me trapped here, a failure, a nobody, than see me succeed somewhere else. We want you to be happy, Gary mumbled, not meeting my eyes. You want me to be manageable, I shot back. You want me small, like you. I walked out of the kitchen and up the stairs to my room. I didn't pack. I just grabbed my purse, my phone, and my laptop. I walked back down the stairs. My parents were still in the kitchen, frozen in place, the pot roast forgotten on the stove. I'm leaving, I said from the front door, and I'm not coming back. Not ever. And if either of you ever contacts another employer of mine, I will go to the police. I will file charges. I will show them the evidence I'm going to start collecting, and I will watch you both go to jail. Do you understand me? I didn't wait for an answer. I walked out the door, got in my car, and drove away. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to go. I spent 3 nights sleeping in my car at rest stops, washing up in gas station bathrooms, and living on granola bars and bottled water. I applied for jobs constantly, using my phone as a hotspot. And this time, I added a new paragraph to every cover letter. Please note, due to a family emergency, I am currently estranged from my parents. If anyone other than myself contacts you regarding my employment or background, please disregard it entirely and contact me immediately. I can provide multiple professional references who will vouch for my character and work history. On the 4th day, I got a call from a small bookstore in a town called North Bend, about an hour from Omaha. It was a used bookstore, dusty and charming, run by an elderly woman named Eleanor. I saw your application, Eleanor said, her voice crackly but kind. And I saw your note. Sounds like you've got some troubles, honey. Yes, ma'am, I said, my voice thick. But I promise you, I'm a hard worker. I love books. I graduated with honors in English. I just need a chance. Well, Eleanor said slowly, I'm an old woman. I'm too old to be scared of people's parents. Why don't you come in tomorrow and we'll have a chat? In person. I drove to North Bend the next day. It was a picture-perfect small town, with a main street lined with old brick buildings and a park with a gazebo. Eleanor's bookstore, the Reading Nook, was a cozy haven of overstuffed shelves and the smell of old paper. Eleanor was a tiny woman with white hair and sharp, intelligent blue eyes. We talked for 2 hours. About books, about life, about my dreams of being an editor someday. I was honest about my parents. I told Eleanor everything. The lies, the sabotage, the fake police report. Eleanor listened without interrupting. When I finished, the old woman reached across the counter and patted my hand. My husband's brother was a mean drunk, Eleanor said simply. Used to call up his son's employers, too. Told them the boy was a thief. Some people just can't stand to see a light shine brighter than theirs. You're not your parents, Mia. You never were. She hired me on the spot. It was minimum wage, part-time, but it came with a tiny studio apartment above the bookstore that Eleanor owned. It was barely bigger than a closet, with a pull-out couch and a hot plate, but it had a window that looked out over the main street, and it was mine. I worked at the bookstore during the day. At night, I worked on a secret project. I started documenting everything. I called every single employer who had rejected me and asked for details. I was polite, professional, and persistent. I got names, dates, and the specifics of the lies my parents had told. I kept a detailed log in a spiral notebook. I called the Omaha marketing firm again and spoke to Patricia. Patricia, feeling guilty about the situation, agreed to send me an email confirming the nature of the phone calls she had received and describing the forged police report. It wasn't a legal document, but it was a paper trail. I even hired a private investigator for a single hour-long consultation. The PI, a gruff but kind woman named Rita, told me that what my parents had done could potentially constitute defamation, fraud, and in the case of the forged police report, a more serious crime. Whether you want to press charges is up to you, Rita said, but you have enough here to build a case. And more importantly, you have enough to scare them into leaving you alone. I didn't want to press charges. I didn't want to see my parents in court. I just wanted them to stop. I wanted my life back, so I wrote them a letter, a long, detailed, devastating letter. I included printouts of my notes. I described the calls to the dentist, the grocery store, the diner. I included Patricia's email about the forged police report. I laid it all out in black and white. The letter ended with these words, "I am not a criminal. I never was. You tried to make me one. You tried to bury me alive in this small town, but I dug my way out. I am building a life, a good life, a life you will never be a part of. If you ever contact another employer of mine, if you ever speak my name to another human being in a professional context, I will not hesitate. I will take this evidence to the county sheriff, and I will file charges. You will be arrested. You will go to court. You will have a criminal record, your own, not the one you invented for me. This is the last time you will ever hear from me. Goodbye." I mailed the letter certified mail, return receipt requested. A week later, the green card came back, signed by my father. Life in North Bend settled into a gentle rhythm. I worked at the bookstore, read voraciously, and started writing a blog about classic literature. I made friends, the young couple who ran the coffee shop next door, the retired history teacher who came in every Tuesday to browse the military history section, the stray cat I named Atticus who took up residence on the bookstore's front porch. 6 months passed, then a year. I was promoted to store manager. Eleanor, whose health was declining, began talking to me about eventually taking over the business. "I don't have any children," Eleanor told me one afternoon. "And this place has been my life. I'd rather see it go to someone who loves it than be sold off to a developer." "What do you think? Mia think you'd want to be a bookstore owner someday," I cried. Happy tears. The kind I thought I'd never cry again. I never heard from my parents. Not a phone call, not a letter, not a message through a friend. They had finally, after all these years, let me go, or maybe they were just scared. It didn't matter. The silence was a gift. But what I didn't know was that across the miles, in the small house in Brighton Falls, things were falling apart. Brenda had fallen ill. It started with a cough she couldn't shake, then fatigue, then a diagnosis that changed everything. Stage 4 lung cancer. She had never smoked a day in her life, the doctor said. Sometimes these things just happen. Gary watched his wife shrink before his eyes. The woman who had once been so full of spite and control became small and quiet. She spent her days in the recliner by the window, staring out at the street, watching for a car that never came. At night, she talked. She talked about me. About the baby she had held in her arms, about the little girl who used to bring her dandelions picked from the backyard. About the teenager who stayed up late studying, determined to be the first in the family to go to college. "I was so proud of her," Brenda whispered one night, her voice raspy and weak. But I couldn't show it. Every time she did something good, it felt like she was leaving me behind, like she was showing me up. Gary sat beside her, holding her hand. "She never tried to show you up, Bren. She just wanted to make something of herself." "I know that now," Brenda said, a tear sliding down her cheek. "I know it too late. The things I did, the lies I told, I ruined her. I ruined my own daughter." Gary had no words of comfort. He had been complicit. He had stood by and watched, said nothing, done nothing. The guilt sat in his chest like a stone. Brenda made him promise one thing: find her. When I'm gone, find her. Tell her I was sorry. Tell her I was sick in the head, sick with jealousy and fear. And give her this. She reached under her pillow and pulled out a folded, yellowed piece of paper. It was a letter written decades ago by Gary's mother. She had given it to Brenda the week I was born. Brenda had kept it all these years, hidden away, unable to throw it out but unable to truly read it, to absorb its message. "I should have listened to her," Brenda said. "I should have been different, but I was too scared. Tell Mia I was scared. Tell her I loved her, even if she doesn't believe it." 2 weeks later, Brenda passed away. Gary buried her in the small cemetery on the edge of town, under a gray sky that threatened rain but never delivered. He stood at the grave alone, the only mourner, and felt the full weight of the life they had built together. A life of missed opportunities, of smallness, of fear. And at the end, a daughter who wanted nothing to do with them. He found me through the internet. It wasn't hard. I had a blog now attached to the bookstore. He read my posts, saw pictures of me smiling in front of shelves of books with a cat on my lap and friends around me. I looked happy. I looked free. And he knew, with a certainty that broke what was left of his heart, that I was better off without them. But he had made a promise. So he got in his old pickup truck and drove the 2 hours to North Bend. He sat in his truck outside the bookstore for a long time, watching people come and go. He saw me through the window, helping a customer, laughing at something. I was beautiful. I was everything I was supposed to be. Finally, he got out and walked inside. 2 years after I left Brighton Falls, I was in the back room of the bookstore, unpacking a box of newly arrived used books. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon. The bell on the front door chimed. I called out, "Be right there," and finished wiping the dust off a first edition of To Kill a Mockingbird. I walked to the front of the store and stopped. Standing by the counter was a man I didn't recognize at first. He was thin, gaunt even, with deep lines around his eyes. He held a worn baseball cap in his hands, then he looked up. It was my father. My body went cold, then hot. My hands clenched into fists at my sides. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to hide, to scream for help. Gary looked around the store, at the cozy chairs, the shelves of books, the sunlight streaming through the windows. "This is nice," he said, his voice hoarse. "Really nice, Mia." "What are you doing here?" My voice was a flat, hard line. He flinched at my tone. Your mother passed away 2 weeks ago. Cancer. It was fast. The news hit me like a wave, but not a wave of grief. It was a wave of shock, of complicated, tangled emotions I couldn't even begin to sort through. I said nothing. Gary continued, his eyes on the floor. "Before she went, she made me promise to come see you, to tell you something. She was sick for a while, Mia, and I think being sick made her think about things, about what she did, about what we did." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was old, creased, and yellowed. He held it out to me. I didn't take it. "It's a letter," he said, "from your grandmother, my mother, Brenda's mother-in-law." He let out a shaky breath. "She wrote it to Brenda when you were born. I found it in your mother's things after she passed. She'd kept it all these years. I think it explains some things, not excuses it, but explains it." I stared at the paper. Slowly, cautiously, I took it from his hand. I unfolded it and began to read. The letter was written in a delicate, old-fashioned script. It was addressed to Dear Brenda. It read, "Congratulations on the birth of your beautiful daughter, Mia. I am so happy for you and Gary. But I must write this because I see a look in your eyes I recognize. It's the same look my own mother had when I was born. It's a look of fear. You are afraid this little girl will outshine you, that she will do all the things you were too scared to do. My mother spent my entire life trying to keep me small. She criticized my dreams, sabotaged my friendships, and made me doubt myself at every turn. It took me 40 years to realize she wasn't trying to protect me. She was trying to protect herself from the pain of watching me succeed where she had failed. Don't make the same mistake, Brenda. Don't let your fear turn you into a woman who destroys her own daughter. Love her, set her free, or you will lose her forever, and the loss will be all your own." I read the letter twice. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. It was a curse, I realized. A poison passed from mother to daughter, generation after generation. My grandmother had seen it, had tried to warn against it, and my mother had been too weak, too scared, too consumed by her own demons to listen. I looked up at my father. He was crying, silent tears running down his weathered cheeks. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," he whispered. "I know I don't deserve it. I stood by and let it happen. I was a coward. I wanted you to know that it wasn't your fault. It was never your fault. It was her sickness, our sickness, and I'm so sorry." He turned and walked out of the store, the bell on the door chiming softly behind him. I stood frozen, the letter trembling in my hand. I watched through the window as my father got into his old pickup truck and drove away, disappearing down the main street of the town I had built for myself. I didn't know what to feel. Relief, sadness, anger, it all swirled together in a confusing mess. But underneath it all, there was something new, a strange, quiet sense of peace. I looked around my store. My life, my friends. Atticus the cat rubbed against my ankles, purring loudly. I reached down and scratched his head. I thought about my mother. About the grandmother I never knew who had tried to break the cycle. About the poison that had been passed down, and about how it had finally, with me, come to an end. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my small apartment above the bookstore, the letter from my grandmother in my hands. I read it again and again, trying to understand the woman who had written it. A woman I never met. A woman who had seen the darkness in her own daughter-in-law and had tried, desperately, to shine a light on it. I thought about my mother. About the small, bitter woman who had spent her life feeling inadequate, feeling left behind. I thought about the baby Brenda had once held, the little girl she had probably loved before the fear took over. I thought about the pain it must have taken to hold on to that letter for 22 years, unable to throw it away, unable to truly hear its message. For the first time, I didn't feel just anger. I felt something else. Something that surprised me. Pity. My mother had been trapped too, trapped in a cycle of jealousy and fear that had been passed down like an heirloom no one wanted. She had been given a warning, a chance to break free, and she hadn't been strong enough to take it. She had let the poison win. But I had broken it, not through my mother but through myself, through the sheer force of my will to survive, to build something new. The poison ended here. The next morning, I called a leaner and asked if I could take the day off. Then I got in my car and drove back to Brighton Falls. The town looked smaller than I remembered. The streets narrower, the houses shabbier. I drove past my old high school, past the Piggly Wiggly where Carol had turned me away, past the diner where Sal had given me a chance and then taken it back. I parked outside the small cemetery on the edge of town. It didn't take me long to find the grave. A simple headstone, fresh dirt, a small bouquet of wilting flowers. Brenda Henderson, beloved wife. The dates showed she was only 58. I stood there for a long time, the wind blowing through the tall grass around me. I didn't know what to say. What do you say to someone who tried to destroy you? I don't forgive you, I finally said, my voice quiet. Not yet. Maybe not ever, but I understand. And I think that's a start. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the letter. I had made a copy, keeping the original safe. I placed the copy on the grave, weighing it down with a small stone. Grandma tried to warn you, I said. She saw what was happening. She wanted you to be different. I think, in her own way, she was trying to save us both. I paused, tears streaming down my face. I wish you could have been different, Mom. I wish you could have been proud of me instead of scared of me. I wish you could have come to my bookstore, met my cat, seen the life I built. You would have liked it. It's full of books and quiet and good people. It's everything I ever wanted. I wiped my eyes. I'm not going to be like you. I'm not going to be scared of people who shine brighter. I'm going to celebrate them. I'm going to love them. And if I ever have a daughter, I'm going to tell her every single day that she can be anything she wants. That her light doesn't threaten me, that it makes the whole world brighter. I turned to leave, then stopped. Goodbye, Mom. I drove back to North Bend as the sun began to set. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, the same colors I used to love as a child. This time, I noticed them. This time, I let myself feel the beauty. When I got back to the bookstore, Eleanor was waiting for me. The old woman didn't ask where I had been. She just opened her arms and I walked into them, crying like I hadn't cried in years. Eleanor held me tight and stroked my hair. There you go, honey. Let it out. Let it all out. I cried for the mother I lost, not in death, but long before. I cried for the grandmother I never knew who had tried to save us both. I cried for the little girl I used to be, the one who just wanted her parents to be proud. And I cried for the woman I had become, the one who had survived it all. The months that followed were different. I still worked at the bookstore, still wrote my blog, still spent my evenings with Atticus purring in my lap. But something had shifted inside me. The anger that had once burned so hot had cooled into something else. Not forgiveness exactly, but acceptance. An understanding that some people are broken in ways that can't be fixed and that their brokenness is not my fault. I started a new project. A small writing group for teenagers in North Bend, meeting at the bookstore every Saturday morning. Kids who felt misunderstood, who felt trapped in their small town, who dreamed of something bigger. I listened to their stories, encouraged their writing, told them that their dreams mattered. You can be anything, I told them again and again. Don't let anyone tell you different. Not your parents, not your teachers, not the voices in your own head. You are enough. You have always been enough. One Saturday, a shy girl named Lily stayed after the group ended. She was 14, with braces and glasses and a notebook full of poetry. Mia, she said, her voice hesitant. Can I ask you something? Of course, Lily. What's up? Lily looked down at her shoes. My mom, she doesn't like that I write. She says it's a waste of time. She says I should focus on practical things, like learning to type or getting a job at the grocery store. She says writers are dreamers who never make any money. I felt a familiar ache in my chest. I knelt down so I was at Lily's eye level. Lily, I said softly, your mom is scared. She's scared because she doesn't understand your dream. She's scared because it's different from what she knows. But that doesn't mean your dream is wrong. It means she's scared. Lily looked up at me, eyes wide. So what do? You keep writing, I said. You keep dreaming. You hold on to that light inside you, and you don't let anyone, not even your mom, blow it out. And if you ever need a place to write, a place where someone believes in you, you come here. This bookstore will always be open to you. Lily threw her arms around me in a fierce hug. Thank you, she whispered. I hugged her back, tears pricking at my own eyes. You're welcome, sweetheart. Now go write something amazing. As Lily skipped out of the store, I watched her go and felt the cycle finally, truly break. The poison ended here. Not just with me, but with every young person I could reach, every dreamer I could encourage, every light I could help stay bright. Years passed. Alina passed away peacefully in her sleep, and true to her word, she left the bookstore to me. I ran it with love and dedication, expanding it, hosting author events, making it the heart of the community. I wrote a book of my own, a memoir about survival and forgiveness, and it became a small success. I never married, but I was never alone. The bookstore was full of people, full of stories, full of light. Sometimes, late at night, I would take out the letter from my grandmother and read it again. I would think about the woman who wrote it, the grandmother I never knew, and feel a connection across the decades. We were the same, my grandmother and I, we had both seen the darkness, and we had both chosen light. My father never came back. I heard through the small-town grapevine that he had sold the house in Brighton Falls and moved to Florida to be near his sister. I didn't reach out, and neither did he. Some silences, I realized, were better left unbroken. On the 10th anniversary of the day I left Brighton Falls, I stood at the window of my bookstore, looking out at the town I now called home. Atticus, old and gray now, slept in his usual spot on the windowsill. The sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, the same colors I had ignored all those years ago. I thought about my journey. The pain, the betrayal, the loneliness. The rest stops and gas station bathrooms. The kindness of a stranger named Alina, the letter that had finally given me peace. I thought about my mother. Not with anger anymore, but with a sad, quiet understanding. Brenda had been a victim too, of a poison she never asked for and didn't know how to fight. She had lost the battle, and in losing, had tried to make sure her daughter lost too. But I had refused to lose. The doorbell chimed, and a young woman walked in. She was maybe 19, with messy brown hair and tired eyes. She looked around the store nervously. "Can I help you?" I asked, smiling. The young woman approached the counter, twisting her hands together. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, "but I saw your book, the memoir, and I think my parents are doing the same thing. The same thing yours did. Calling my jobs, telling lies. I don't know what to do." My heart clenched. I looked at this young woman, saw myself reflected in those scared, desperate eyes. I reached across the counter and took her hand. "Come sit with me," I said. "Let's talk. I have a feeling you and I have a lot in common." We sat in the cozy reading nook by the window, and the young woman told me her story. Her name was Rachel. She had moved back home after college, couldn't find work, and every promising lead mysteriously fell through. She had finally figured out why. I listened, nodded, and when Rachel finished, I smiled. "I know exactly what you're going through," I said, "and I'm going to tell you what I wish someone had told me. It's not your fault. It was never your fault. And you are going to get through this. You are going to build a life so bright, so full, that their darkness won't be able to touch it." I told Rachel about Alina, about the bookstore, about the letter from my grandmother. I told her about documenting everything, about the private investigator, about the letter I had sent my parents. And I told her about the most important thing of all. The poison stops here, I said, for you and for me. We don't pass it on, we don't let it make us bitter or small. We take the pain and we turn it into something else, something good. Rachel cried, and I held her hand. When she left, she had a job application for a part-time position at the bookstore and a promise that I would help her however I could. I watched her go, then turned back to the window. The sun had set and the first stars were beginning to appear. Atticus stretched and purred. "You know what, old friend," I said, scratching his head. "I think Grandma would be proud." That night, I wrote in my journal, a habit I had kept for years. I wrote about Rachel, about the cycle of poison, about the strange and beautiful way life had of bringing things full circle. I wrote about my mother, and about forgiveness, and about the difference between forgiving and forgetting. At the end, I wrote these words: "I am not my mother. I am not my grandmother's mother. I am the one who broke the chain. I am the one who chose light. And every day, in this little bookstore, in this little town, I get to help others do the same. That is my legacy. That is my peace." I closed the journal and looked out the window at the starry sky. Somewhere out there, I believed, my grandmother was watching, and she was smiling. The next morning, I opened the bookstore as usual. The sun was bright, the birds were singing, and the smell of fresh coffee drifted in from the shop next door. Rachel arrived at 10 o'clock for her first shift, nervous but excited. I showed her how to use the register, how to organize the shelves, how to recommend books to customers who didn't know what they wanted. By noon, Rachel was laughing with a customer about a favorite author, and I knew I had made the right choice. At the end of the day, as Rachel was getting ready to leave, she turned to me. "Can I ask you something, of course? Do you ever think about your parents? Do you ever wonder if things could have been different?" I thought for a moment. "I used to," I said, "a lot, but not anymore. I've made peace with what happened. I've made peace with who they were. They were broken people who did broken things, and I am a person who chose to heal." Rachel nodded slowly. "I hope I can get there someday." "You will," I said. "It just takes time, and a lot of books." Rachel laughed and hugged me goodbye. I watched her walk out the door, then turned to look at my store. The shelves were full, the lights were warm, and the world outside was quiet and still. I walked to the window and looked out at the town. The same sky, the same colors, the same world. But I was not the same person who had driven away from Brighton Falls all those years ago. I was stronger. I was wiser. I was free. And somewhere, in a small cemetery on the edge of another town, a letter lay on a grave, slowly fading in the sun and rain. A letter that held a warning, a hope, a love that had been too late. A letter that had finally, after all these years, done what it was meant to do. It had set us all free. My name is Mia, and this is my story.